Betty Neilson. We lived in a big city, so it's nothing compared to what it is here. I mean, people here are very, very friendly. In the big city, it's not. And I graduated with a class of 400. Wilder Wilson High, that's in Youngstown, Ohio. Right after high school, I had already planned that I was going to join the military. There was a part of me that just wanted to serve my country. It's from the beginning, I just wanted to. Could have been a teacher if I wanted to, gone to school, be a teacher. In fact, at one time I thought of a flight attendant. And my husband wanted to be a pilot. So I thought God was going to put us together one way or the other. But then when he started dating me, he says I was too expensive, so it was either the pilot lessons or me, and he chose me, so I'm thankful that he did. But as far as for a woman back then in the 70s, it was better for a woman to go into the Air Force. There was a lot more respect for women in the Air Force, and even then there was struggles in that, but it was better to join the Air Force. So that she went and joined the Air Force first, then I did, and then my brother did. So 3 of us went in. You learn discipline. When we first went in, you just thought some of the stuff was, really, is this what we're going to do? They taught you how to change your bedding different ways how to fix your bed in that. When you brush your teeth, basically, when you ate, when you slept. But you know what? It was all discipline. We had some girls that had, they were spoiled. They did not know how to do certain things. And of course, the ones that did know how to do stuff in that, well, we thought, if they're not going to do it, fine, That was wrong. We had to support them. We had to help them. We had to teach them, or we failed. And we learned quick that in order to succeed, we had to help one another. And I'll tell you, by the time we graduated basic training, we were sisters. And that there was nothing as far as the color, the race, or anything. We were sisters. If someone had problems marching, then we would help them. If someone had problems, because remember we had to iron our uniforms and they had to shine our boots, and if they weren't perfect, well, you had to redo them. So if someone didn't know how to do that, we stepped in and we helped them. You could either go to tech school, and they would assign you the school that you were going to go to, or you went straight to your job. And I went straight to Patrick Air Force Base. And I was under administration instead of, kind of didn't want the administration job, but I got it anyway. And I learned a lot because my job was, I knew who was going to get promoted, who was going to get demoted, as far as the raise, everything. So that was actually the better type of job because you knew everything that was going on. I already knew how to type. I already knew how to, the administrative part. So they figure, why waste the money? And that and I don't regret it, because otherwise I would have probably never have met Colonel Guarino. Again, I got to meet a lot of people. I got to actually meet a POW. I worked with him for a while, and that was Colonel Lawrence Guarino. He had his job was, and he got stationed at Patrick Air Force Base. His job was, you know how in the military, you just don't get awards. There's a committee, and they decide what award you get. And his job was to get all the information, all the facts. And then once they got all the facts right, then they decided what award you got. And that was one of the biggest honor I had, was to meet POW. And at the time, he had scars and that. And, he went through a lot. And what kept him going was the love for his country, the love for his family, and the love for God. And that's how he survived. My husband and I both we got married. And the thing was, he had orders to go to Elmendorf Air Force Base. I had orders to go to D.C. That's where my orders was to go. But because I worked on the administration, I had said, please, can you give that order to somebody else? Hold me back, because we were going to get married in May, and he was leaving in February, and I thought it would cost the government less if you leave me here, because all you're going to do is transfer me back one way or the other. Either he was coming back to Maryland with me, or I was going to go to Elmendorf. Even so, they did. They held me back. We got married, and then I didn't go to the Elmendorf right away. 2 months later was when they had the orders for me, so then I can be with my husband. Well, for my husband, I would say 5 months was pretty darn hard, because he left in February, and then we didn't get married until May. We only were there with each other for about a week, and then he had to go back to Emmendorf, and I had to go back to Patrick Air Force Base. Mm-hmm. And that is one of the reasons, because in the military, the Air Force is 4 years or 6 years. I only put in 3 years because he was getting out. And at the time, and you know that, at the time, if you wanted to get out, you could. Now, I didn't want to, but the closest base was in Omaha. He wanted to move here. He wanted to farm here in Iowa. And they were kind enough to say, okay, we'll let you out early. In the Army, Air Force, Marines, Navy, the divorce rate is very high. And I think they were trying to do something nice to make sure that we didn't fall apart. And I started Freedom Quilts because even though I don't wear the uniform, my heart is for this country. And I love this country so much. And when we got attacked, and the real funny thing about this all is, when we were watching it on television and the first plane hit, my husband right away said, we're being attacked. I looked at him, and you're listening to the media, and they're saying totally the different thing. And you're looking at the skies, and he says, look at the sky. He says, I went to pilot school. I learned that you protect your passengers. That wasn't protecting the passengers. They went straight to that building. Then when the second plane hit, well, they were still kind of debating in that until they hit the Pentagon. And I tell you, to be honest with you, both my husband and I wanted to go back in the military and serve. But God had other plans. And his plan was this project. Freedom Quilts started the night of 9/11. It broke my heart to see all these families. And I kept saying to God, what can I do? What can I do to help them? Show me the way, Lord. And his answer was, and I heard him as plain as day. And don't tell, I get mad at people when they say, oh, God doesn't speak. Yes, he does. And he told me, make quilts for my children that are suffering. I didn't know how to make quilts that well. I asked the community, and everybody pitched in, and everybody helped. And then people taught me how to do it the correct way. And all of a sudden, I bloomed. I wasn't much for speaking. I hated speaking. In fact, in school, I told one of my teachers that I would rather take an F than get in front of the class and speak. And God opened my heart to speak to people, to open up to the public. If it was for this project, yes. And we started making quilts. We started in September, because that's when it happened. And by December, we had 1,554 quilts to take to New York, to the families. And then when we went to the Pentagon and we were giving out quilts to the survivors, we spoke with some of the survivors, and we spoke with the families and that. And they came up to us and they go, what about the ones that went in because of 9/11? Are you going to open your heart to them? I'm not going to say no. I said yes. And my husband, when we first started, they wouldn't allow us to get information in that. But after that first event, then they trust us. They knew that we were not going to harm the families or nothing like that. So then we could take whoever came to receive their quilt had to tell us who they lost. And then we would put it in our database. I make personalized one and I make non-personalized one. It just depends upon the families. Twice a month I get a list, and it's only the Army. I get a list, and it's the spouse, it's the parents, and in the case of divorce it could be mom and dad, and then the children. And we make quilts for all of them, and we send it to them. We got the word out, and we had people send us, because at first I didn't know, I had people send me blocks, and then we would form them into a quilt. I had blocks from France, from Germany. I mean, I had from all over the world and that. And then it got to the point that we wanted the quilts. What breaks my heart the most is the 9/11, people just flooded to help. And then a year and a half and later, then there wasn't that much help. People were still hurting. I received, because of my continuing work with the 9/11 families, I received soil from Ground Zero. The only ones that received that is actually family members. And when I asked, why was I given this honor? And it said, because you are part of the family. You never gave up on us. And another thing that really, really hurt me was the military. You know who supports me the most besides the school? This school here. And I thank you with the bottom of my heart, just as the families do. Is military. There isn't that many people out there that don't, And what gets me is, you don't understand, only 1% join the military, 1%. When these men and women come back, they're reliving this over and over and over again. And the parents go through, I'd say, worse than someone that has died, because their loved ones are home. They figure their loved ones are safe. And then when their loved ones kill themselves, it's devastating. And I have had problems with some of the families because they figure, I don't deserve this. My son died. He killed himself. He served. He still was fighting that war in his head. And I have to defend the ones that have committed suicide. And that's why I do it. 9,247, and we're still making. And they're telling me the story of their loved ones from when they were little and on. And then I take what they tell me. I also request pictures so I can put that on the quilt. And then any little thing that touches them as they're telling their story about their loved ones, it gets put on that quilt. So when they open up their quilts and they see that, it's a memory. It's a memory of their loved ones. Put your arms around them. Say thank you. And and if you see a Vietnam veteran in that, let them know you're thankful, and that means a lot to them.